All right, good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on Sales Made Simple, 5 Ways to Build Your Bottom Line. Today's session is brought to you by the City of Mississauga, presented by the Mississauga Business Entrepreneur Center. My name is Mona, and I am the Communications Coordinator for MBEC. So MBEC is part of the City of Mississauga's Economic Development Office. We are the central source of information and guidance for small business owners and entrepreneurs. If you'd like to connect with us, please check out mississauga.ca/MBEC. So a bit more about MBEC. We are your central source for small business information, resources, and guidance. We are currently providing our support and services remotely, and our hours are from Monday to Friday from 9 to 5. Please feel free to reach out to us for any of your small business concerns. We provide free business information and guidance, webinars and workshops, resources and tools, training and mentorship programs, as well as various entrepreneurship programs. So MBEC is here to support and help your small business to succeed. Our contact information can also be found on this slide. Feel free to email us at mbec@mississauga.ca, call us at 905-615-4460, or visit our website at mississauga.ca/MBEC. Also, feel free to connect with us on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter at Mississauga EDO. So a bit about our speaker today. We have Caitlin Blundell. As a certified business coach, Caitlin helps business owners build a more profitable and enjoyable business, one that works for them, not because of them. She helps her clients achieve more using proven tools, methodologies, and systems that have been tested and perfected over tens of thousands of businesses worldwide. So as a coach, she holds her clients accountable, and just like a sports coach, she pushes them to perform at optimal levels. So you can find out a bit more about Caitlin at caitlinblundell.actioncoach.com.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that introduction. So hi, everybody, and welcome. As Mona said, I'm Caitlin Blundell. I am a certified business coach. And as an action coach, my real objective is to support business owners in the community. So I'm really excited to be here today with the Business Entrepreneur Center and the City of Mississauga to invest the next hour with you all. And I say that deliberately, that we are investing our time together, because a mentor once told me that you can either spend your time or you can invest it. After all, you can always make more money, but you cannot make more time. So I do want to recognize that you've made a choice to invest your time here today. And I know you've done that for a reason. So if you do have a specific question or a concern that you'd like to chat about today, specifically related to, sales and marketing or profitability in the business, or anything else for that matter, but specifically in those areas, please do go ahead and put them into the chat. That way I know where to spend a little bit of extra time during the presentation, and I can address some of those questions as we go. I'm also planning to make myself available after this for anyone who's serious about building their business, who might want to talk in more detail about their own unique situation. So I'm just going to share my slides here. Today's presentation is called Sales Made Simple. And it's 5 ways to build your bottom line. So I'm definitely going to cover some tools and strategies to boost your sales and your conversion rate, but that's really just one of the 5 places that you can take action to boost your profit. And at the end of the day, of course, that's what it's all about. A truly healthy business is one that is measuring their profitability, not just their revenue. So in addition to sales strategies, we're really talking about a simple formula that you can use to multiply your profits. And before we dive in, I would like to just ask your permission to be your coach for the next hour and a half. And as your coach, I have 1 rule for today and 3 goals. These might be familiar for anybody who was at my presentation last week. Which I believe the recording for that is available now. So if you weren't there, please do go check it out. Okay. So first is the rule. I truly do believe that being in business should give you more life and not suck the life out of you. So my rule for today is that we're going to have fun. And sometimes that's not what people expect from a business seminar. But I know when I started my business, one of my guiding principles and one of my main goals was that I really wanted it to be fun. So I made it a rule. And we are going to talk a little bit about goals today and the importance of that. So there we go. We're going to have fun. Here are the 3 goals I have for today. The first is that I want to educate you and give you some tools to help you build a really amazing business. I'm not here to motivate you. And this is something I hear a lot as a business coach. People sometimes assume that a business coach is here as a cheerleader or as a motivational speaker. And I always say that motivation alone is kind of useless. After all, if you motivate without educating someone, then they're likely to just do dumb stuff faster, right? So I want to educate and really make this your training ground. The second thing is I do want to coach you, right? That's what I love to do. So if you have questions, if you have comments as we go, points of clarification as we go, insights as we go, please do go ahead and pop them in the chat. And I'm going to pause here and there throughout the presentation to answer those. And as I said before, please do feel free to connect with me afterwards as well. And the third goal is that I do want you to walk out of here with some ideas that you can use right away. I'm an action coach. I'm not a think about it coach. So the goal is action. All right, so I'm going to check the chat now and see if there are any questions there yet. I'm not seeing. If you do have questions, if you do have anything you want to pop in there, please go ahead. I am looking at it. Okay, so let's get going. Anybody who did catch my presentation last week will already know my definition of a successful business. It's a commercial, profitable enterprise that works without you. Because if you need to be there every day, then it's not a business, it's a job. And often it's a job with no vacation days. Because if you want to go away for, 4 or 5 weeks in the summer, what happens to the business? Is it making money for you while you're away? Or is it collapsing and losing momentum? So one goal with all my clients, no matter where they start, is that we're working towards a commercial, profitable enterprise that works even when they aren't there. And of course, that does take time, right? That doesn't happen right away or overnight. Last week, we talked about developing your unique selling proposition, and we talked about offering a guarantee. And if you haven't watched that recording yet, please do go check it out on the MBAC website. It's a really good companion to today's presentation. But as I said, today we're focusing on the 5 ways. So again, please go in the chat. Let me know what you believe the 5 most important numbers are in your business. Okay, what are the numbers that you absolutely need to be tracking in your business? And this isn't a trick question. There's no wrong answers here. So what are the numbers in your business that you absolutely must track, your key metrics? And while you're thinking about that, I'm going to talk through a very simple and very powerful formula that I use with my clients. This isn't the 5 ways formula, to be clear. We're going to get to that. This is a different one. This is the formula for success in life. It says be times do equals have. In other words, if you think about what you have, and you could replace that with results, right? The results that you have. There are 2 things that got you to what you have right now. The actions that you take. That's like the do part of the formula. And then the other part in there is you, right? The B part is who you are. And that includes your thoughts, your emotions, your skills, everything that makes you who you are. In other words, this formula says who you are times the actions that you take determines the results that you get. And you've probably seen some people in life who are doing absolutely everything they can do. And maybe that's you. Maybe you're in that position, right? On a scale of 1 to 10, you're doing all you can. You're doing at a 10. You cannot fit any more action in. And then, that's familiar to me. Most of my clients they're not sitting around. They're really busy people. But here's the thing. If you're thinking, I'm already busy, I'm already doing at a level 10, and I don't have the results I want yet, or I feel that my business is capable of more. Well, there is one piece left in that equation, right? And that's to work on yourself. And the cool thing about this is that there is a multiplying effect. So any improvement you make to yourself, you get that multiplying effect on your results. So if you're doing at a level 10 and you work on yourself, let's say maybe you become more efficient. Let's say you gain a new skill. Let's say you become a better leader. Maybe you understand your profit margins at a higher level than you do today, right? So any part of that knowledge or skills or attitude has a multiplying effect on the results that you get. And maybe you've seen people in the opposite situation, right? Where the B part of the equation is really dialed in. Okay, these are your positive thinkers. They're really focused on their goals. They probably say some positive affirmations. Maybe they meditate, whatever it is they need to do to work on themselves, but the action is lacking. Maybe they're sitting there waiting for things to happen, trying to manifest them, but they're not taking enough action or the right action. So we really focus on both. We focus on the be and the do because ultimately we want to get you to the results that you're after. And I wanted to present this today because I think that, at the last session, we had a lot of fairly new business owners. And I think this is particularly important for new business owners to understand because becoming a business owner it's way more than like building a website or launching a product. It takes a radical reimagining of the B side, right? The who we are, the identity. Your identity grows and stretches in a way that you probably never anticipated when you first decided to launch. And that doesn't change, right? As the business grows, the leader grows. So for many of the newer business owners that I coach, it's this process of assuming this identity of the owner, becoming more deliberate, more assertive, more knowledgeable, more decisive, maybe more clear in their own goals and their own vision. That's where a lot of the work is because then the do side of the equation also becomes a lot more clear. So it is really important to be deliberate about where you want the business to take you. After all, if you don't know where you want to be in, let's say, 5 years, then how do you know what steps you need to take now in the short term or the medium term to get there? And if I ask the average entrepreneur to show me the goals of their business, at one end, what's the vision? What's the ultimate endpoint? And at the other, what's the goal for the next 90 days or even the next week? If I were to ask you those questions, what would the answer be? Typically, people don't really know, or they're stronger on one side than the other. One stat I saw recently was that only 6% of business owners have their goals written down, but 90% of really successful entrepreneurs do. And that's not because they have like magic pens or something. It's about getting really clear and focused and taking deliberate action to ensure the business gets you to where you want to go. And by the way, your goals might be revenue. They might be tied to time, time spent in the business. They might be lifestyle, taking that once in a lifetime vacation or any vacation, right? Any vacation will do right now. But whatever they are for you, it's important to know these these answers for yourself and for your business. And personal goals matter here for sure, because when you are a business owner, your personal goals are your business goals, because the business needs to perform to a level that will allow you to reach those personal goals. So I'm putting some questions up on the slide that you can use to help you visualize your results. Okay, as well as revenue, where do you live in 5 years' time? What do you drive? What investments have you made? What about travel? What about your family? What can they do now in 5 years' time? And how much time are you working in the business? Are you still playing that really active day-to-day role? These questions give us a destination that we can work back from. So while I'm not a really big advocate of a formal 5-year business plan, because it's too long, it's too far in the future, I am an enormous advocate for having this clear destination in mind, because then we can focus on building a 1-year plan and a 90-day plan, literally week by week for each business quarter to set you on the right trajectory. And inside of that kind of 1-year plan and then 90-day plan, we set really clear, smart objectives. How many leads do you need? Exactly what do you need your conversion rate to be? And we can figure out what some of those leading indicators are and then put a plan in place to measure and improve the metrics, so they become the KPIs or the key performance indicators for the business. And when those KPIs are tied to a destination that you're personally and emotionally invested in, they become a lot more meaningful. So I will say that ideally, these key outcomes are things that you yourself do control. So, it isn't our objective this year is to get, X dollars in funding. Because at the end of the day, that's not something that you control. what you can control is you can work out kind of what the characteristics are of a business that's appealing to, a specific government incentive program or an investor, and then get to work to make your company as much of like a slam dunk for them as possible. So we get to work on both of the be and the do sides of the success formula to put you in a place where there's the greatest chance of making that happen. But the actual objectives in the business are tied to things that you yourself can do. All right, so back to sales and marketing. So one question I get an awful lot is, well, what should my budget for marketing be? And if you're thinking like an accountant, that's not a bad question because marketing costs the business money, right? Unfortunately, it's entirely the wrong question if you are thinking like a business owner, because it's like this, right? If I were to ask you for $80, probably don't want to give it to me. But if I offered to pay you back $100 for every 80 that you gave me, well, now you're probably a bit more enthusiastic, right? And that's exactly what your marketing should be doing for you. Very simply, every dollar you spend to market your business should be bringing you more than $1 back. And how much more depends on a bunch of factors, but as long as your marketing is bringing in more than you've spent, then you've got a pretty good thing going, right? Some people try, well, it's brand awareness. If you're a small business, if you're starting out, let's not think about brand awareness. You're not Coca-Cola, okay? We don't need to worry about that yet. Let's get the return on investment in the marketing. So if I were standing here trading you $100 for every $80 that you gave me, what would your budget for marketing be? Would you be saying, after a certain number of transactions, sorry, I can't do this anymore. I hit my marketing budget for this quarter. Don't give me any more $100 bills. Of course not. So what's your marketing budget? Because if you're confident that you're bringing in more than you're spending, it's really, the question becomes, how fast do you want to grow? So it's not what should my budget be, it's what should I be spending to buy a new customer? And to answer that question, that's a great question. What should I be spending to buy a new customer? So there's a few things that we would need to know, right? First, we need to know on average how much each new customer costs the business right now through whatever marketing channel you're spending on or considering spending on. And we'd also need to know on average how much money the average customer is spending, not just the first time they buy something, but over the course of their lifetime. So these numbers are your customer acquisition cost and their lifetime value. And once we know these things, then of course we can do some work to drive down what you're spending on a customer and increase what you're getting back, right? Does that make sense? So, if I were to ask you how much it costs to buy a new customer this month, would you know? And if not, how can we find out? For example, if you're paying for ads online, and let's say you put $1,000 towards Facebook ads, and from that, let's say you get 10 clicks and 2 of them actually buy. So now you've spent $1,000 and you have 2 new customers. So the cost to acquire each of those customers was $500. So let's say we get to work improving the page that they land on, and we get it to a point where the click rate doesn't change, right? The ad doesn't change, the spend doesn't change. You still have 10 people clicking, but now 5 of them are buying. Okay, now you're only paying $200 per customer. And that difference, that $300 difference, that's coming to you in profit. Okay, one more thing to consider here is that if you are thinking about selling your company at some point, if you have that exit strategy in mind, or if you're looking for some sort of investor in your business, then these are certainly some of the numbers that potential buyers or funders would be looking at. And, the further apart these numbers are, the better. But as a general rule, we'd certainly want the lifetime value of a typical customer to be more than 3 times what you paid for them. And again, you have 2 levers here, right? To get to that stage, you can work to increase their lifetime value, and you can work to decrease their acquisition cost. Make sense? So that's kind of some higher level marketing concepts, but I want to take that and apply some of these principles to a hypothetical company. And I'm going to get into my 5 ways formula. I love this formula because it pulls the whole business together in one place. I think we can all agree that the point is to bank more profit at the end of the day, right? That's why we do what we do, why we have the business that we have. And so these are 5 ways to multiply your profit. And I'm just going to take a quick look in the chat here. Key numbers that people put in. There's some really good ones in here. Profit, yes. Overheads, price point, annual goal, expenses. Awesome. Yeah, those are great numbers. And I'll show you where they end up in this formula. Okay. So let's walk through this piece by piece. First thing you're going to notice are the numbers in red. Okay, the number of customers, the total revenue, and the profit. So why are those ones in red? It's kind of a trick, sorry. It's not because they're the most important. It's actually because, you know, when I start working with a new client, this is usually our first conversation, right? We sit down and they say, okay, Caitlin, I need more customers, I need more revenue, I need more profit. But you'll notice that one thing all these numbers have in common is that they all come after an equal sign in this formula. So that means that they are the outputs. And so the way that we can change these numbers is by focusing on the inputs. Okay, so these are, the inputs are those 5 things that are in blue. So actually those 5 things in blue are the most important because those are the areas where really we can take action and we can make change. So starting with the number of leads, and number of leads might mean, you know, if you have a bricks and mortar store, that might be the number of people who walk in. It might be the number of email inquiries you get, number of website visitors. However you do business, it's the total number of people who have expressed some sort of interest in what you're selling. Okay, these are your prospects. And you can multiply that by your conversion rate, which is the percentage of those that actually bought. So if 10 people call your business and 2 make a purchase, your conversion rate will be 20%. If 10 people click on your ad and 2 make a purchase, again, you're at 20%. If you're not tracking these numbers already in your business, then please do start thinking about how to measure them. You can't grow what you don't know. Multiplying the leads times the conversion rate will give you that first output number, the number of customers. Okay, and then we can move on to looking at the number of transactions. Now, this is how many times people buy from you on average over the course of a year. So some may come back often, some might come just once. We're interested in the overall average. And same thing with the average dollar sale. Okay, some may spend $50, some may spend 5,000. We're going to average it out. And that gives you your second output figure, the gross revenue. So number of customers times number of transactions times average dollar sale gives you your revenue. And then finally, we look at the profit margins. You know, what's the profitability of each thing you're selling? And I'm talking here about after you pay yourself and after you put your money into your marketing fund, because not paying yourself obviously is not going to be sustainable, and you can't just stop marketing after you get a few customers. So after all of those expenses are factored in. Okay, the final output then is the profit in the business. And that really is the key number, right? Everything else leads to here. There's a great quote, revenue is vanity, profit is sanity. I don't care what your revenue is, right? I want to see profit in the business, and so do you, I'm sure. So you can think of this formula as the kind of the chassis for your business. All businesses are built on the same basic chassis, and then what you do with it is up to you. Like you can get a luxury car or a really basic car, and they're both built on the same chassis. Okay. So if you don't know these numbers, the first thing we need to do is figure out how to measure them. And once you start measuring, you might be really surprised at results. So again, let's jump into the chat and let's talk about where the opportunities are. So if you, let me put it this way, can you already tell which of these areas in blue has the most opportunity for your business? Okay, from what I've told you so far, where is the area of greatest opportunity for your business? And I do have one question here. Do we need to have 3 times in profits of what we spend in marketing? No, not 3 times in profit. So if the 3 times the customer lifetime value. So let's say you have a customer who, let's go back to that ad click example where you spent $200 to acquire the customer. Ideally, the lifetime value of that customer they would be spending more than $600 on your business. Okay, so whatever it is you sell, if you're selling them something that's $600 the first time around, great. If not, then maybe we're trying to keep that customer, keep them coming back, sell them something different, a few times over the course of the year, or have some sort of a subscription model. So, over time, they are spending at least $600 in your business if you spent $200 to acquire them. Okay, I hope that clears that up. Okay, so which area has the most opportunity for your business? And I'm going to quickly put some numbers in so we can really see how this all works. Okay, I'm going to put in some nice round numbers as kind of a hypothetical example. If you do know your own numbers, please go ahead and get out your calculator or put it down on a piece of paper if you know your numbers, or even if you can guess at them. Okay, so this is for a business that's doing all right. Okay, so this business has 4,000 leads over the course of a year. 25% make a purchase, which means that this business has 1,000 customers. On average, each customer makes 2 transactions. Again, on average, they spend $100 each time. So what do we have for revenue? Okay, we have $1,000 times 2 times 100. This business has $200,000 in revenue for the year. Their profit margins are at 25%. Okay, so 75% of that $200,000 is reinvested in the business for either the goods they're selling, their own salary, their marketing fund, whatever other overhead expenses they have. That means their profit is $50,000. And again, once you know both what your numbers are today and what you want them to be, then that's when we can start designing a plan to make it happen for your business. And so this, of course, takes us back to those big picture 5-year goals, the 1-year objectives, and that 90-day plan. Remembering that if you don't know where you're going, it's hard to know what steps will get you there. But once you do have some clear objectives in mind, especially around these output numbers, then we can start figuring out where these input numbers need to be and building a plan to get you the rest of the way down the path. And any sort of improvement, obviously, is great. And I love the combined effect of making a series of incremental improvements. It's more sustainable over time, and it's more kind of feasible for the business owner to take on. So I want to check out the impact of a 10% improvement in each of these areas over time. Okay. Of course, we could set out to double or even triple the numbers, and sometimes that's doable if it's like a brand new business and the owner still has a lot of bandwidth at the outset. But it is, of course, possible to grow too fast. And then the consequence of that is often the owner has to work an unsustainable number of hours because they don't yet have the right team in place, or they run into a cash flow issue because fueling the growth does take some capital. So for this example, and generally, I would say we're shooting at this kind of 10% improvement across the board. Makes it easy math and makes it more comfortable for the business owner. Of course, some businesses will typically have 1 or more areas with some low-hanging fruit, areas where we can achieve more quickly, or maybe areas where we might be a little bit more conservative. So it would be pretty rare for a business to have exactly the same equal opportunity for improvement across all 5 areas. But hey, easy math, right? So let's start there. So starting with the 4,000 leads, adding 10% gives us 4,400 leads. I hope you're with me. I'm not sure anybody warned you that we'd be doing math today, but as you can see, a lot of business is math and marketing is math, and it doesn't have to be like advanced algebra, but you do need to master the basics. Okay, so how do we get that extra 10% in leads? Well, one interesting thing is that once you start measuring this, to some degree, the increase is almost automatic because you see what's working, you adapt what you're already doing, and beyond that, you might step up your marketing game with better SEO, for example, or by placing ads where your target market will see them. So we can kind of supplement or replace what you're doing, and of course, we test and measure until we know what's really going to work for you. And keep in mind that the average business is only using 2 lead generation strategies. So often there's plenty of room to test out some other ideas. This ties into last week's conversation as well about unique selling proposition and about knowing your target customer, because with more clarity there, then you can get more qualified leads in the door. And this also goes back to the question of whether marketing is an investment or an expense for the business. Because if I'm talking to somebody and they want to put less money into marketing, if they are not keen to invest, it's most likely because what they're doing isn't working. Okay, they're not getting more than they're putting in. And so maybe the people that they're reaching aren't converting. So in addition to reaching the right audience, of course, we work to increase your conversion rate. Maybe this is done by offering that guarantee to de-risk the purchase for the customer. Or maybe we start doing better follow-up with people who didn't buy from you after a first conversation. And, here I know a lot of people, go 25%, add 10%, must be 35%, but you'll see on the slide that's not the case, because remember, we want this to be 10% better, not 10% more. So 10% of 25 is 2.5. That's what we add on, bringing us to 27.5% now. Okay, with those new figures, the output jumps to 1,210 customers. Again, for the transaction rate, we're adding 10% to get to 2.2. For average sale, we're increasing to $110. So if you are regularly discounting your prices to win new business, maybe try switching over to the value added offer that we talked about last week instead. And for regular customers, are you cross-selling them other services? Do your customers know everything that you offer? Are they aware of your range of products or range of services? And I want you to remember that you can excel at any one of these areas, any one of these 5 ways, but what we're really looking at is the combined effect of all of them together. And so we do work on them all at the same time. It's not like we work on one and then another, right? It's not like you go to the gym and work your right arm one week and your left arm the next week, okay? We want the synergy of all of these things working together. So check out the impact of these changes on their revenue. We're up to $292,820. Now that's not bad over the course of a year. And it's based on just making a series of tweaks. So the pace of this change is really up to you. Making a small change every week, for example, will give you a completely different business at the end of the year. Finishing off with a 10% increase to the profit margins to 27.5. And I will say, although this is last in the formula, the profit margin piece, this is often actually the first place that we look for a quick win, simply by, raising prices if they're under the market rate or if they haven't changed in several years. So in these 5 areas, right, we've added 10%, 10, 10, 10, and 10. So we should have 50% more profit, right? Actually, again, because of the multiplier effect here, because of the way these numbers multiply through the formula, we get a 61% improvement in profit. So this little business is now banking $80,525.50. So in your business, what would you do with a 61% improvement in profit in 12 months' time? Can you see yourself hitting some of those goals, taking more vacation, maybe making some key hires to take on some of the workload? And I hope you can see how you can manage and change the blue input numbers. Those are the ones we can take action on. And I also want to mention that if you're not looking at these 5 areas already, then you don't have a clear view of what's happening in your business. Okay, each one is really important. I'm going to pause here again. I want to know who has a pretty good grasp of these numbers for their own business. Is there anyone who feels like, yeah, I got this. I know all of these. I've measured them all. So if you don't, I want you to think about, first of all, how you can get there, right? How can you measure these 5 different variables? And I also would love you to start thinking about one action that you can take in a high priority area, okay? Something that you can change in the next 30 days, an action you can take in the next 30 days. And I want you to write that down. If you're able to write down, one specific action in each area, then that's even better. But let's focus on, I want everybody to write down at least one action they can take that will improve at least one of these variables for their business. Okay, and while you do that, I'm gonna, Christopher has a question in the chat. Shouldn't it be 3 times in contribution margin for that customer? Contribution margin. Christopher, I'm not sure what you mean by that. Can we follow up on that question afterwards? And in the meantime, I'm gonna just keep running here. Okay. Contribution. Yeah, Christopher, you could do it like that. You could do a 3 times the profit margin or the contribution margin. Sure. If that's the math you prefer, then by all means, that's equally that would be fine. I I like to focus on the most simple math possible. That's certainly another valid way of doing it. I wouldn't be opposed to that at all. Okay, so I'm gonna take a few minutes to run through the formula with a couple of different examples of some different strategies that you might be able to use in addition to what you just wrote down to help move these numbers in your business. And I want you to remember some of these are going to be more suitable to a retail business. Some are going to be more suitable for like a professional service provider, but that same kind of chassis will be common across any business. Okay, well, the particular actions you take or strategies you implement might vary a little bit depending on the particular business and the opportunity there. And while I do that, what I want you to listen for in particular is examples of how we can test and measure all of these 5 ways, because the real power comes when we get beyond the guesswork and actually take a really fact-based approach. It's easy to guess. One action coach client guessed they were converting 6 or 7 out of every 10 people that called into their business. Spent 2 weeks actually measuring this and found out that it was only 17%. So how panicked was he, right? Thought he was at 70%. He was actually at 17. But to reframe that, that's actually a great opportunity, because if the business was doing what it was doing with only 17% conversion rate, that means that there's tons of room to improve and to improve quickly. So with a better sales process, with some sales scripts, he took conversion up to 49% in just 2 weeks, and actually had to cut back what he was spending on advertising because he couldn't keep up. Okay, so don't be afraid of what you might learn, because even when the numbers are lower than you guess, what you're looking at is an opportunity to improve. Okay, so for example, to measure your lead generation, if every place you advertise, maybe you use a different promo code. So let's say you have, some direct mail going out. Let's say you're doing some online advertising. Let's say you have a referral incentive program, and for each one, you have a different promo code. And then as your leads come in, they're redeeming different promo codes, and you know exactly where they're coming from. Okay, so that's one awesome strategy that you can use to test and measure how you're doing on lead generation and where your leads are coming from. And of course, you can use that to figure out what's working and do more of what's working and less of what's not. Okay, so in terms of leads, the number one thing, if you want an extra 10% in leads right away, if you're not asking for referrals, make sure you start. That can be your 10% right away simply by asking for referrals. We can increase the effectiveness of any ads that you're running. Again, going back to last week's presentation about unique selling proposition and about that key WIIFM, what's in it for me. If you can really push what's in it for me into the headline, then that can kind of help with the lead generation in this area. And I do know that MBEC has tons of resources around lead generation, particularly around digital marketing. So I would kind of refer you back to them. Please do go talk to them. They've got great expertise in this area. In the meantime, don't become so invested in the digital side that you forget the offline world. There are also opportunities to build strategic alliances and partnerships, direct mail. Direct mail is not dead. Offer lunch and learn sessions, join business networking groups. These are all great offline lead sources. For conversion rate, critically here, you can measure at every point in your sales process. So, another client realized that They had the sales process where people would call in and they'd go out and they'd provide a quote for the service. And then they'd do the job if they won the job. So they realized they were at 95% conversion rate from that initial phone call, the initial inquiry, to go out and do a quote. But then after that, after doing the quote, they were only getting 1 out of every 20 jobs that they quoted. So they were really quick off the mark through the first part of the process, right? If somebody called in, they were out giving a quote within 48 hours. But then, guess what? They weren't following up. They were waiting for the customer to call them back. So with a better system for following up within 48 hours, again, of providing the quote, that conversion rate went to 30% for that second part of the sales process. Now, some people would stop there and accept that and say, okay, 30%, that's great. That's a huge improvement. But this particular business owner was now kind of playing the game and trying to work the levers in the business. And they thought, well, why am I waiting 48 hours? What's going to change between them getting the quote and 48 hours later? So what happens if we just ask for the sale right away when we give the quote? And sometimes, we really shy away from asking for the sale. But what do you think happened? The conversion rate went to 60%. Okay, they jumped from winning 1 out of every 20 jobs to 12 out of every 20 just by asking for the sale while they were there, having that script. And sometimes it really is that easy, right? So when you're measuring your conversion rate, don't just think about the broad strokes. Try to break it down so you know exactly what's going on, what the conversion rate is from point to point along the entire sales process, for each salesperson, if you have more than one, for different times of day, different times of week. And that, again, allows you to double down on what's working. Even to go a step further, can you figure out where your best customers are coming from? If all your very best customers are coming through referrals, for example, then, let's talk about a formal referral incentive program. Because as well as being busy in the business, we really want to focus on winning more of the really great work. We might want to stop ads that are bringing in the wrong sort of traffic because at the end of the day, they're wasting your time. And by the way, if you do go spend a couple of weeks, test and measure your conversion rate and find out that you are honestly, genuinely converting 80 to 90% of your leads, I'm still going to tell you to do it differently. Here's what I'm going to tell you. Raise your prices, or at least, focus on doing that A-grade work that pays the most money and that you enjoy the most. The goal, if you're converting at 80 or 90 or 100%, then there's an opportunity to increase your profit margin by raising your prices. You won't scare away all of the customers, I promise. All right, moving on to the number of transactions now. And for most businesses, there are a number of ways to improve the number of transactions to keep people coming back and buying more than once or more than the frequency that they're already buying at. The first and easiest is to simply ask people to come back, to keep yourself top of mind, to stay in touch. Sometimes that's your 10% right there, just in the asking. Especially if you don't have too many customers, right? If you're focused on higher value transactions, then this could be just reaching out periodically with a news article that you think that customer might find interesting. If you have more clients, then there might be more value in setting up something like an email newsletter. But at the very least, make sure you're connected on social media with your professional account so that they can see any content you're posting. Keep a database of past customers as well as past prospects, for that matter. There are various stats out there about how much cheaper it is to keep a customer coming back instead of going out and buying a new one. The consensus is that it's about 6 times more expensive to find a new customer on average than selling again to someone who's already bought from you. So staying in touch is key. Maybe every 2 to 3 months. Direct mail is great for this. Thank you letters through direct mail for doing business are a terrific strategy here. And realtors, I find, are really good at this. This is one area where realtors kind of excel because they know that people aren't going to be coming back and buying another house right away, or it's kind of unlikely. So their 5 ways number for the average number of transactions in a year for their average customer might be 1 and might never change from 1. But of course, eventually people will be in the market for another house. People do move. So sending out some mail, once every quarter does make a great deal of sense. I think I mentioned this already. One point to consider is whether your current customers know the full range of products or services you offer, educating them about everything that you do. Maybe there's an opportunity to sell a customer who's currently buying one thing from you. Maybe you can sell them something different as well. Okay, moving on to the average dollar sale. And again, we talked about this a little bit last week, right? Getting away from competing on price and offering the lowest price and offering discounts to win new business. Basically, if you don't give people any other information about why they should buy from you, then they kind of default to buying on price. How much do you charge? And there are other ways that you can steer that conversation. You certainly don't want to be the cheapest in the market, especially if you're offering good or outstanding quality or service. And in fact, if you are still trying to compete on price, you might be shooting yourself in the foot, because I've seen clients raise their prices and get more business. There's a risk in being the cheapest solution in the market. There's a perceived risk, especially if you're selling B2B, right, to business customers. They might not want to have the cheapest solution because it's too risky. So they might be more comfortable with a mid-market or top of market solution. Okay, so here's the big secret to improving the dollar value of your average transaction. You want to improve it 10%, right? So you can, again, go ahead and write this down. Raise your prices, raise your prices 10%. Honestly, a lot of your customers might not even notice. And it's usually the business owner who is absolutely terrified to raise the prices. And then when they do, finally, the only thing that happens is that they make more money, or, maybe they lose their worst customers, which maybe that's for the best, right? Maybe those people are taking a ton of time and complaining about everything anyway. So beyond that, let's talk about some other things you can do. One of them is upselling. McDonald's taught us this one. Very simple question, do you want fries with that? With every order, do you want fries with that? Because they know that 3 out of every 10 people will say yes, and they will spend that extra bit of money on the order, and that's their profit. Obviously, you're not selling fries, so what can you add to your customer's order? There was a lawyer who took this question really seriously. What's would you like fries with that question if you're a lawyer? They asked, while you're here, does your will need updating? And it's funny because, would you like fries with that in the context of law? But they added $3 million in revenue by asking every single customer that question. So this can be a really easy way to increase sales fairly dramatically. Another strategy here is to anchor to a higher price. So to offer a higher priced item first, and then everything after that seems, of course, much more reasonable. Going back to real estate, I don't know if you've ever had that experience where, you give a price range that you're comfortable with, and a realtor will take you to a house that's just outside the top end of your price range, partly to test your resolve, and partly so that everything after that seems very reasonable. And you can continue to really get to know what your customers are actually trying to do, right? What questions can you ask so that you get to know what your customers are trying to solve? Sometimes that leads to changing what they're buying or giving them a slightly different offer. The only caution here is that if you're focused, really a lot on upselling or cross-selling, there is a possibility that you might scare off some customers because the process becomes really complex. So do make sure you get the first sale first before you start trying to add anything onto it. And another thing that sometimes I've seen people do is to try and dump a bunch of goods that they don't want to carry anymore. And that's, again, it's a bit risky because you might get the sale that day, but if you're selling things that have been discontinued or whatever and not giving people that information, you might also lose out on some of the lifetime value of that customer because they might not kind of keep coming back time after time. So don't oversell, but certainly look for opportunities to to increase the value in these pieces incrementally. And again, like coming back to testing and measuring. Actually, you know what? We didn't really talk about profit margins. Profit margins, you know, there are certainly ways here to increase your profit margins, right? We can take a look at auditing your expenses, figure out if there is any cost that can be cut. We can again look at raising your prices if there's an opportunity to do that. The thing is, as the revenue grows, the profit margins will kind of get better because the cost coverage is done. So it almost happens automatically anyway as we grow the revenue. But we certainly do have, I have 50 other strategies for increasing profit margins that we can take a look at, as well as raising your prices, which we've already talked about. Okay, so now we're back to test and measure, because no matter what exciting ideas you have, this is definitely where you start, right? And so if you have a store, this could be having somebody at the door asking, hey, how did you hear about us? It could be those promo codes that I mentioned to figure out which ads are working. If you have a few different places you sell, like let's say you have a website and a store and you're taking sales in both places, then definitely track them separately because they'll tell you a different story. I was working with one client who was spending $5,000 every month on digital ads. And they did that thing with the promo codes where they started using different promo codes in different areas to figure out what worked. And they found out that one ad that they were spending $1,200 a month on actually brought in the lion's share of their business. So you better believe they stopped spending in a lot of those more unproductive places and allocated the budget to that really productive space, doubled down there and increased business dramatically. Okay, this stuff works. Of course, this test and measure piece can be a little bit more complicated. For example, if you have one ad that's only bringing in like a small fraction of your traffic, but if the customers coming from that source are spending more than your average customer, okay, so maybe that changes the equation a little bit. So we need to make sure that the testing and measuring that you're doing is giving you that really full comprehensive picture, so you know what's happening and you know what decisions make sense. In terms of testing, again, this is one of those questions that I get a lot. Somebody will come in and say, well, I've never tried, direct mail, whatever it is. I've never tried direct mail. Do you think I should? Do you think it would work for me? And I never really know what to say because, it's like, okay, well, let me go get my crystal ball, right? Like, I don't know if it's going to work for you. I can't predict that. But so the answer I always say is, how do we test the idea, right? Can you send 50 pieces of mail? And will that give you an indication of whether that will work for you? Or maybe you need to send 100, right? Maybe. But you definitely don't need to start out by sending like 5,000 pieces of direct mail and blowing your budget for the entire year on direct mail. Always test it first to see whether it's going to work. So what's the bare minimum that you need to do to test the idea? So I started today by talking about my goals for our time together. That's something I always do because I want to make it crystal clear. I've also talked a little bit about your goals, right? Those 5-year goals and the 1-year goal and the 90-day plan. That's really intentional. If there's no goal posts in the game of business, then you can't score. And it's also true that everything you measure does improve. So I push my clients to put that plan in place for the future. And we all know that, the best intentions around goal setting aren't enough. We all know we should set goals. We all know we should write down goals. I'm not sure it's new information for anybody listening. So let's talk about why. Why do we talk about that? And it's a little bit of science to go alongside the math we've already done today. So your reticular cortex at the base of your brain is the area of your brain where you get input from your cranial nerves and your spinal nerves. It's kind of a core function of your brain that tunes you into relevant information. In really plain English, we gather information about the external environment through our senses, and then our brains kick in to help us interpret the information, because not everyone sees the world the same way, right? We each have our own frame of reference, and that's maybe, formed by things like, your culture, personality, your lifestyle, your stress level, any past experiences you've had, and more, right? So your reticular activating system, based on your reticular cortex, filters the information that you're receiving about the world. Why is this important? Okay. Have you ever had that experience where you want to buy a new car? Maybe you do buy a new car. And then you start seeing that particular car everywhere you go, right? You're suddenly really aware of how many of them are out there. And of course, there were just as many of that type of car around before, but maybe you just weren't tuned into them to really notice them before. We're programmed to really notice the things that we're thinking about. And we protect ourselves from information overload by limiting how much of the world out there that we actually take in. The consequence of that is that we see what we expect to see and we move towards what we think about. If somebody recommends a new restaurant that you've never heard of before, suddenly you might start to hear about that restaurant like 3 times in the next week, right? Maybe you see a commercial on TV, maybe you overhear someone talking about it, maybe an ad pops up in your feed. It just seems to come up everywhere. So that's your reticular activating system in action. And this is what setting goals does for your brain. Okay. When you get really clear, really specific goals for your business, it's like putting a little antenna up on the top of your head, and it cues you in to things that will help you. So maybe that's a conversation that you might have otherwise forgotten or skimmed over. And now you're going like, oh, that might be relevant to me. Maybe this is something in your relationships, new marketing ideas. You just start to become aware of different tools and resources and knowledge and information that can help you achieve your goals faster. It's a really cool thing to take note of, and this is the reason why we put our goals in writing, right? Why that's so important, because this reticular activating system is really like the compass for your brain. So writing down your goals, and like I asked you to before, writing down the actions that you plan to take is one way to set the compass, because now you're filtering out the relevant information to identify the ideas and the opportunities that are in line with your goal. And by the way, this works for positive goals, okay, the things that we are actively working towards. But unfortunately, this pattern of we see what we expect to see, it also works in reverse. So if you're in a state of kind of burnout or overwhelm, then it's really hard to find things to be appreciative of or grateful for. And sometimes we kind of get stuck in that rut where we're seeing what we expect to see, and in terms of feeling more and more burned out or more and more overwhelmed. So I'm not really like a law of attraction type of coach. I don't know if that's come through yet with the numbers piece and the action piece. But I do like what Zig Ziglar once said, which is this: positive thinking will let you do anything better than negative thinking will. Okay, positive thinking will let you do anything better than negative thinking will. So we set the goals first because we set the internal compass. We focus energy on the positive outcomes we want rather than the negative ones that we're trying to avoid. And also that's also tuned into what we know about happiness. Okay, the science of happiness tells us that our perceived progress towards a goal does make us happier. And if we don't feel like we're progressing with a destination in mind, we're less happy. You guys know me, right? My goal is having fun. My goal is happiness. So this is really important. And on the other hand, if we're talking about burnout or if we're talking about unhappiness, well, that can hit when we feel like we lack a meaningful goal or we lack clarity about why we're doing what we're doing. Sometimes it comes when our actions don't align with our values, or when we feel like we're kind of mired in a challenge. And I don't know if that resonates with anybody over, the experiences we've had over the past year and a half and lockdowns and all of that stuff. When you feel like you're in a challenge and no end in sight, when we lack a meaningful goal, when we lack progress towards the goal, it does it does create a serious challenge for our minds to overcome. And great goals that we have a personal, meaningful, emotional relationship to, that we've set for ourselves, are one way out of that state of overwhelm or burnout. So I'd like to end with this quote. This is from business author Jim Rohn. And he said a lot of wise things. If you're not familiar with his writings, I certainly encourage you to check him out. But I think this really sums it up, okay? If I could get it to come up on the slide. Never wish your life were easier, wish that you were better. And work harder on yourself than you do on your job or on your business, right? In our case. And I want to include this because this is absolutely the simplest and most important business formula. Okay. When you become a better business person, you get a better business. And it's worth investing time and effort into developing your math skills, your leadership skills, your marketing skills, and creating that roadmap for your own growth. And that means stepping back from the day-to-day of the business for a few hours every week and focusing on working on the business rather than in the business. So I said at the top, my focus is action. I want to leave you guys with an action plan. And I choose this word really carefully because there is a difference between motion and action. When you're in motion, you are planning and strategizing and learning, right? You might feel a sense of motion if you, have a sense of what's possible or what the next level might be for your business. An action, on the other hand, is a specific behavior that can deliver an outcome. So, for example, thinking of 5 new lead generation strategies for your business is motion. Calling someone and asking for their business, that's action. The learning and the planning are essential. Don't get me wrong, but it's the action that gets results. And as humans, we have a natural tendency towards motion, okay? It gives us all of that like satisfaction and happiness and feeling like we're making progress with none of the risk of failure, which we don't like, right? We resist that as humans. So don't let preparation become procrastination, okay? Do hold yourself accountable to the action that you need to take. And I do want to take a moment here to talk about next steps. And I know that some came today just for information, and I really hope you got it. I hope you picked up some tips and ideas and some useful tools that you can take and use right away. And that's great. I do these sessions because this is the easiest, the fastest way I can help people. So that's excellent. And if you did get value from this, I would love it if you would jump over to LinkedIn and connect with me there and even leave me a recommendation just to say that you attended and you think, this kind of talk might help other business owners too. That would be really terrific. I'd love that. If there's anyone who's thinking, okay, I've got some information, but now I need to execute, or wait, I've got some information, but now what do I do with it, right? Because it's not just what you know, it's what you do with what you know. Then I'd love to help you. So if you're curious about what I do, if you're curious about coaching, you're here today, I'd love to gift you a free coaching session. Okay, the first one's on me. This goes for people who are here live today. It goes for people watching the webinar. Please do reach out. Please do contact me. We'll use some time to get some work done on your business. There's no obligations, no strings attached. And of course, I forgot to put my email address on the slide. I'll put it in the chat. And the folks at MBAC have my contact info as well, so you can reach me through them. So I hope this was really helpful for everybody. I'm happy to hang out here in the chat and take any questions that you have. And otherwise, I hope people do kind of reach out and connect with me after this. I'd love to hear a little bit more about your own businesses and what you're up to over the coming 90 days. Thank you for being here.
Awesome. Thank you for that presentation, Caitlin. We do have one question that came in. Are LinkedIn ads or DMs good at generating new sales?
I mean, yes, in very broad terms. Yeah, LinkedIn is a great place to market in really broad terms. Of course, the devil's in the details, and there is really effective ways to do it and really ineffective ways to do it. Reaching out and spamming a bunch of people with something that's really about you or about your own goals for your business is going to be less effective than kind of reaching out carefully to kind of key people that you'd like to connect with, being really targeted, being really personal, and keeping in mind that WIIFM from last week, that the what's in it for me. So being intentional about communicating to them right away what's in it for them to have a conversation with you. In terms of LinkedIn ads, like paid ads, I think people get real mixed results. And some of this is, it's like, lots of people pay money to go to a gym, and if they don't go to a gym, of course, they don't get any results, right? And the money is not well spent. So part of it is if you are going to invest in ads, making sure that they're really, they're great, they're focused on conversion, they're focused on value, they have kind of a clear objective, a clear call to action, all of that stuff that I'm sure, and Beck, I know you guys have great digital marketing resources that you can help out with that. That being said, depending on the industry, depending on the business, I have heard from several clients that their LinkedIn ads maybe didn't get them the result they were looking for.
Okay.
I
So
mean,
would you,
that's their experience. Everybody might have a different experience
for
based
sure,
on how appealing the ad is.
for sure. So would you recommend direct messages at all to reach out to new customers and gain new sales? Or would you just stick to like creating ads on different social media platforms?
To do kind of targeted messages to kind of key individuals.
Yes, like through Instagram or Facebook or LinkedIn.
Yeah, absolutely. Reaching out, messaging people, um, commenting on people's posts. Again, keep it, professional, keep it focused on creating value for that person, solving a problem that they might have, um, staying away from really generic buzzwords like, we're the best customer service, free offer, really jargony marketing speak that tends to maybe turn people off a little bit. But if you're, I mean, I do this all the time. I reach out to people on LinkedIn and connect with them. I try and, I try and shoot for 20 new connections a week. And it's been a really effective way for me to grow my business. So certainly it's something I would recommend doing if you can do it well.
Awesome.
Test,
So
test
I
it,
guess
test it and measure the
mhm,
results.
exactly. So I guess you're saying that selecting a target number, like you said, 20 per week, and then kind of growing from there would be more effective.
It's effective in that you know what the goal is. And if you're actually trying to make a sustainable change in your business, having a number, having a KPI, so you know whether or not you've achieved what you've set out to achieve, is really valuable, right? If there's no goalposts, you can't score.
It's a good reference. All right, so if anyone else has any other questions, please feel free to drop them into the chat. We do have around 20 minutes or so left. I see someone sent a message about average sales being very wide and hard to figure out. And then I think you also mentioned that you have products ranging from $19 to $2,000. If you want to give us more clarification on that, we'd be happy to answer
Sure.
your question.
And that does come up sometimes.
Mhm.
So what you can do is you can actually, if you have a few different key products that are priced very differently, you can have two different 5 ways numbers, one for each. So for example, I was working with a company that had one cost for kind of a new install and another kind of maintenance program that was more of like a cheaper monthly cost as opposed to the one big install cost. So in that case, they had two separate sheets. Um, and tracked everything separately. Um, and that worked really well. Because again, yeah, if the things are not at all alike, then there's limited value in averaging them together when you can be more targeted and figure out how to test and measure and improve those numbers for each thing you're selling.
Okay. I guess we could hang around for a bit till any other questions come in. If not, we could always end this earlier.
Yeah. Mona, will you make my email address available to everybody?
Yeah, for sure. I
So
can send it
my
out in the list of resources afterwards.
that would be great because I didn't put it on the slide.
No worries. And someone asked if if everyone will be receiving a copy of the slides. Yes, shortly after the webinar, we will be sending out an email with all the resources. And then we've got another question. What's a good conversion rate for online sales versus online visitors?
Um, So this one, it varies a little bit based on the dollar value of what you're selling, okay? Because the more expensive the whatever it is, probably the fewer people are going to convert. If it's something like over $200 or over $250, quite often they might not convert on a first online visit because they're going to want some sort of follow-up. They're going to want some other conversation. So the sales process might be a little longer. The conversion in that instance might be from the website to a follow-up phone call, or to, they want some sort of resource from you, download an article, I want to learn more. So maybe it's at that point getting their email address is the conversion metric for the website. There's really a blanket, what's great. It kind of depends on the business. Yeah, Christopher, I'd be really curious to learn more about what you do. You're asking good questions. Maybe we can follow up afterwards. I'm not comfortable giving like an overall statement of what's going to be good for everybody, because I have a feeling that what will be good for you might not be the same for everybody.
Awesome.
In general, if your conversion rate is really low, like if you're kind of looking at under 10%, then that's an indication that maybe the sales process can be tweaked a little bit to put in another step, right? So that maybe you are converting in a first step to just get their email address, and then there's another conversation, and we kind of step it out to figure out where we're losing them.
Okay. I guess it's a different scenario than for every business. So if you'd like to reach out to Caitlin, I'll be putting her email out afterwards in an email, so feel free to reach out. All right, well, thank you, Caitlin, for your presentation. It was wonderful. And to all the attendees, we'll see you next week at our next webinar. And have a great day, everyone.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you for having me.